and welcome to Get the Table, another wrestling roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilborn, Andy Murray, and Benjamin Richardson here from WhatCulture, where we discuss another burning wrestling issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts where we review Raw, SmackDown, the Wednesday Night War between AEW and NXT pay-per-views. We have interviews, more roundtable discussions like this, and a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But gents, we are gathered here today because we are less than 6 months away from WrestleMania, and WWE do not have a bloody clue who is going to main event it. So I thought we'd sit around here with sufficient time, sufficient pay-per-views, and sufficient resources to book almost anyone in the main event of WrestleMania 36.
I don't want to undermine the subject immediately, but just ask the question, given how much wrestling we've had recently and how WWE's direction, we could describe it as rudderless, being charitable, is anyone even slightly anticipating WrestleMania? Was that the last thing on the wrestling agenda?
We were incredibly lucky to go to last year's WrestleMania, and I'm dreading it because it was about 9 hours, to be perfectly honest.
It was a long slog up in the heavens in the MetLife.
Jeez. But, yeah, I mean, is it now impossible? You remember, like, years and years ago, you could say, right, after this WrestleMania, we can already see that this person is going to headline next year's. They're already setting someone up. It's so, the turnover is so quick now in WWE.
It's not just the turnover, there's also the major factor, the major difference of the last few years is the Saudi Arabia factor, which alters absolutely everything in terms of their long-term planning. That affects who's going to be the champion, who's going to be the Universal Champion, who's going to get a push. Certain people refuse to go. So that is the biggest influence on what will occur at WrestleMania now. Do you think yes, it is impossible to predict.
Ever going to see someone hold a top title for like an entire year as a result of stuff like that?
Yes, we'll see Brock Lesnar do that. We'll see anyone who the Princedom of Saudi Arabia deem worthy of their company. Basically, we could see Cain Velasquez do it, for example. I doubt he will.
Hiroki Sumi coming back.
Yes, Hiroki Sumi, who, quite honestly, the best thing to come out of these Saudi Arabia shows, I would... If I get to see him again, I'll say ultimately it's a net positive.
Okay. So looking ahead to next year's WrestleMania, who is the first name that you think should headline it?
My honest answer to that, but it does make a bit of a mockery of the question, is absolutely nobody because it's really unpredictable, but not in an exciting way. Can't tell where this is going. In a chaos, they have no idea what they're doing kind of way. But the first kind of option I've written down here, and it does look like a likely direction, if not for WrestleMania, maybe for some other major pay-per-view, maybe even as soon as Survivor Series, because they love just throwing these things together on a couple of weeks' notice. I've got the 4 horsewoman fatal 4-way for both belts or whatever belt you want to throw on it at the time. They've obviously brought them back together in recent months, and now we're going to get Becky versus Charlotte for the 700th time on Raw, which, you know, is always a really great match, but how many times have we seen it? Bayley and Sasha are obviously the 2 biggest names in the SmackDown division as well. They're aligned at the moment, but they're going to have to collide because you can't feud with Lacey Evans all year, or maybe you can. That's a dreadful thought. It just feels like the chess pieces have been moved in such a way, although I know WWE is usually playing drafts rather than chess, but in such a way that would allow for them to move them around a little bit and have one win a Royal Rumble and have one win a belt and pass it back and forth a little bit until eventually their beef just can't be settled and they've got to come together for the WrestleMania main event.
Yeah, I mean, I quite honestly, I don't think they're going to do a main event with women in 2 years in a row, unfortunately, because just based on what they've done with Becky Lynch since WrestleMania and the fact that they don't have a draw of a Ronda Rousey.
This is true.
It's going to be difficult for them to present the 4 horsewomen match without the other 4 horsewomen. And I also think they did it at WrestleMania 32. They had the triple threat. I know they did, Becky Lynch wasn't involved in it, obviously. Who was it missed out?
It was Bayley.
Yeah, sorry, it was Bayley who missed out on that one. Who obviously she's current champion, so she would be a necessary component. But I just don't see them selling WrestleMania on that main event. Personally,
they could do the old 5 main events.
Yeah, but they'll present multiple main events, and I think, honestly, the lack of star power is absolutely catastrophic when you look down the roster and you think, who on earth could sell a WrestleMania? I think it's going to be John Cena, and I think it's going to be a John Cena retirement match.
Really?
I think that's what it should be, and I think realistically it's what it could be. Other than that, we're going to see a combination of Brock Lesnar, Seth Rollins, or Roman Reigns yet again.
Who would you have John Cena facing at WrestleMania?
I personally would have him against Daniel Bryan. That for me would be a dream last match. Daniel Bryan is the man who should be the star of the company. We all know that. He still is, in a manner of speaking, other than his push says otherwise. But like in terms of his reactions, he's like the star of SmackDown. It's also a great story. You go back to the teacher and the apprentice. You know, I think, yeah, if that's for one WrestleMania match, that could really get me invested. And if it can get me invested, it can get anyone invested at this stage when it comes to WWE.
Yeah, I sense John Cena is a name that may well be bouncing around for them, certainly for
we haven't
if not the main event, but for a big return at Mania.
I don't believe we've seen him since, was it Super Showdown, his last match? Not the Australian one, last year.
Oh, yeah.
Has he wrestled since then?
I think he had a Raw match earlier this year, but I couldn't tell you what it was.
No.
He showed up for a bit of banter.
Obviously, he missed WrestleMania this past year.
Yeah.
So you could roll back the years to again.
Do some rapping.
Yeah, he's at the stage in his career where he doesn't care.
Yeah. And the man spent like a month building up the 6 move of doom, like he was going to pull off some kind of double rotation Canadian destroyer, and then it was the lightning fist.
It is
great crack. It's quality. It's quality.
You mentioned Daniel Bryan there. His is a name that immediately pops into my head to headline WrestleMania 36. It's been intriguing to see the way that they've utilised him at the previous WrestleMania.
Yeah, I was just going to say Daniel Bryan, just roll it back a second there. The other obvious opponent for him, if not John Cena, is Roman Reigns. That was teased a couple of months back and they ended up embroiled in that bizarre scenario with Eric Rowan and the doppelganger, and they've suddenly just dropped that because they realised this is a bag of balls.
Yeah.
If Roman Reigns is going to be in another WrestleMania main event, I think that would be the one, and I can realistically see them going with that as well.
Yeah.
I think Daniel Bryan, for me, is the name that I've sort of punted for quite a few months now. As, you know, they've done not fascinating, confusing things with him since he returned. You couldn't obviously immediately drop him into a main event at 34. You had that match with him and Shane versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens.
They could have.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
the way he came back and the way his comeback was received, they absolutely could have.
And then he ended up wrestling as a heel at this year's WrestleMania. But I think...
And I would say he stole the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
That match stole the show. And that was a lot of it. I mean, credit to Kofi Kingston. He was involved in it. But no other opponent would have got that reaction.
No. But I just think it's ready-made for him to win the Rumble and go on to WrestleMania. Obviously, like you said, you've got the stumbling block of the Saudi Arabia show swirling around next year.
Yeah.
But
I have another idea, and it's an inversion of what you just said. I think Daniel Bryan could be the champion, and we could see Cena make a shock Rumble appearance at 30, win it, and challenge for his 17th title.
Title versus career.
Title versus career.
I like
lose, and then that be it.
I think, I'm totally into that 100%. Thing is that I still don't think they see Daniel Bryan as any degree of star.
No. I don't think they trust
Yeah.
him, and not personally, not as a wrestler, but obviously physically. And also the again, there's the Saudi Arabia factor. He won't go to Saudi Arabia, quite right.
Yeah.
He refuses ethically, and as a result, he won't be pushed because they know every few months you need to suddenly deflate him.
Yeah.
I think you could easily book Bryan versus Brock 2 at WrestleMania. I think he deserves a Royal Rumble win, considering the poor way that they've treated him in that pay-per-view over the years. I think he'd get. It's one of the very few people that would guarantee a great reaction to him winning it. I think they've already, they're sort of umming and ahhing. He is a babyface on telly, but there's never been an official turn.
No, it's just kind of happened, hasn't it? I think any Bryan scenario would be very creatively fulfilling. I'm just very, very cynical of how they view him as a wrestler.
The one thing Daniel Bryan has in his favour is he's one of the very few wrestlers on that roster that no matter the story they try and tell with him, the fans are on board.
Yes.
They voluntarily suspended disbelief because they want Daniel Bryan to be a success.
I've actually got a Bryan match written down here. It's a different retirement match, and it's one we sit here and fantasy book every single year, and it's probably never going to happen because it never happens. And that is the Undertaker's retirement match.
Yes.
Now, it's the Undertaker, so at this stage in his career, it has the chance to be an absolute train wreck. So how do you minimise the chances of it becoming a train wreck? You put him in there with a genius.
Yeah, to be fair, the last match we saw of the Undertaker was really good.
Was tremendous. The Graveyard Dogs, one of my favourite matches of the year. It was great. That gave me I wouldn't have sat here and made that suggestion without that Extreme Rules match, that tag match, because it was so much fun. Whether or not he's able to do anything in a singles match.
It's not even that. It's whether he wants to. The Undertaker's current relationship with WWE seems to have actually be dissolving for the first time in years. He seemed very cross about not being involved in SmackDown. Although I can understand why why waste this when we could have a few months down when Fox are getting desperate. But already I'm going to be on FS1 sooner than expected. I know there's reasons, but the other thing was he's not booked for the next Saudi show either, even though he's been front and centre of all the previous ones.
Money to be missing.
And advertising this one. Advertising this a lot.
He was advertising it, and now he's not involved. So that suggests to me it wasn't a decision that they made. It's like something that's been made in the last few weeks.
Forced onto them, yeah.
Or he's said, no, I'm not doing it.
I like the idea of a Bryan Taker retirement match. I don't know why it's not been considered more.
Yeah, I think Bryan's one of maybe like the list of people who could probably squeeze some juice out of late career Undertaker one-on-ones pretty
I think
short.
the problem with that now, but how do you sell another Undertaker retirement match?
This is it.
I feel like we've had 2 or 3 of them already.
Yeah, that WrestleMania post Roman Reigns thing was such a...
What about this, okay? Daniel Bryan versus The Undertaker, retirement match, and then underneath, no backsies. That's the only way. Like, that's it. We promised this
For
one.
the last time.
We will properly this time.
Call it the last right.
Fingers crossed, all that.
Yeah.
Because you watch WrestleMania 33 back now at the end of it.
I don't.
It was 33, wasn't it? Yeah. And in the context of today, it's just The Undertaker doing some very assiduous folding at the end of a very long event for no reason whatsoever.
It's good wardrobe management.
Yeah, it's just tidied
It's a
up.
good housekeeping match.
Just everyone sat on the fist looking, he's
Marie
folded that.
Kondo would be delighted.
A name we've sort of mentioned in passing but haven't obviously gone into great detail for is, of course, Roman Reigns.
Best wrestler in the company.
One of the favourites, I'd say, to headline WrestleMania this year. A lot of money already being placed on potentially a Royal Rumble win and then possibly main eventing against Seth Rollins. What do you think of that, Benjamin?
I love Roman Reigns. I have to say, lots of positive things to say to him. I'd like him to main event at WrestleMania where he's not booed out of a building.
Yeah.
Because you know what? At this stage, he probably does deserve it. Problem is, he had the 3 consecutive ones. He's good in 2 of those. Seth Rollins doesn't inspire me whatsoever. No. I don't think he's the right man.
Rollins is another name I feel we should mention, but there's absolutely no way, certainly right now, that you can argue a case for him to main event WrestleMania, especially as a babyface.
Yeah, just sorry to interrupt, Andy. I think one of the problems with Rollins and Roman is that it's impossible to get away from the Shield connotations, and that's something that absolutely won't want to bring up at this stage.
Oh, we all remember the Shield, Rollins,
the two-man Shield,
Reigns, and that was about it.
The other one, the guys on the other show,
and Cassius Ohno.
Well, the thing about Rollins is that I think every single metric you can point at shows that he has failed as the top guy.
I can't understand why he's still champion.
I know it's bewildering to me. It's the Reigns thing all over again. The problem was, I think Reigns definitely had the shoulders broad enough to carry that backlash and so forth. I don't know if Seth Rollins does.
He was still a draw in spite of that backlash.
Well, like, is anyone we can break that down forever, can't we? For me, like, in my head, the fantasy main event, the one that I would like to see as a fan, not someone who's looking at this from business perspectives and so forth, is Reigns versus Bryan, because it's my 2 favorite wrestlers in the company. So that's pretty straightforward. But see, the thing with Roman Reigns at the moment is he's not getting booed anymore, right? You might hear the odd rogue crowd here and there, the odd pocket of people up in one corner of the arena and so forth. But he's not really getting cheered either. They've kind of turned him into just a guy. And I know that this is a company-wide problem and no one gets good reactions in WWE outside of a select few or outside of Grandad coming back for the first time in 2 years to do Stone Cold Stunners and stuff. But putting him in the main event, it just kind of feels like... And I love Roman Reigns. Like, he's one of my favorite wrestlers in the world.
Yep.
I just feel like putting him in the main event is a recipe for cricket chirps, unfortunately, because the guy's not over.
Is there any way you do it with a sort of rerun of the classic Reigns, Rollins, Lesnar? Because you kind of would argue very easily that
classic main event.
WWE will want Lesnar in and around that main event too.
Yeah, but then it means it's the 3rd time you're presenting Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar in a main event of a WrestleMania, effectively.
Yeah. But this is the dynamics slightly shifted.
Yeah, Seth Rollins is unpopular now. Roman Reigns is irrelevant. Brock Lesnar's also just exists for a completely different audience of 2. So yeah, the dynamics shifted, but not in a positive way.
Is there any way to move this along a little bit? We see the Fiend in and around the main event.
Fiend's dead. He's the menagerie in TNA
but as
4
far
years
as they're
ago.
concerned, he's not.
No.
They're still gonna. I mean, they've killed him in order to push him, which is a weird thing. But yeah, I think we could. It's hard to say with Bray Wyatt. You never know.
Yeah.
Who would you have him face?
A lot of people, I think, would sit here and say The Undertaker, because that's a very popular thing, isn't it? Who should face The Undertaker? Supernatural guy. Even though I think that sounds really silly. Because
it is silly, but when you consider The Undertaker's best WrestleMania matches have been against wrestlers.
Yeah, this is it. Like,
Yeah.
the most compelling examples of any supernatural character ever, any great feud, great match, whatever, is against a wrestler. It's not against spooky demon number 2.
I would be intrigued, though, to see a WrestleMania main event go to a no contest. So, you know, we've never seen that before. Certainly not to that sort
Here's
of level.
one, a Roman Reigns opponent for you, which is completely unrealistic. How about The Rock?
Oh,
I'd love
I'd
see
love
The
that
Rock.
as well. Yeah.
I don't see it happening, but they've got the money.
Yeah. That might be the Roman Reigns match that would have everyone hooked, because it's The Rock.
And it's in Florida,
Yeah.
which is ideal for both.
One name that I wrote down, which is slightly more wishful thinking as compared to the names we've already
Bret
mentioned, is not Bret Hart. It is, in fact, Matt Riddle. I have been a huge fan of his, especially considering his time in NXT. And I feel that there is a storyline there, considering how WWE are leaning into it with Ronda Rousey and, of course, now with Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar. There's an MMA influenced match there between let's say a Royal Rumble winning Matt Riddle and a destroyer Brock Lesnar, who defeats Cain Velasquez.
I think the hints I've been dropping recently is that they're looking to realistically do a match between Matt Riddle and Goldberg.
Yes.
That could be a WrestleMania match.
Yeah.
Probably not a main event. As far as Riddle's concerned, and it's an interesting question, and it's exactly in what sort of condition and how will NXT be represented by that time. Now it's a separate brand. It has to be treated equally, even though it clearly isn't, like aesthetically at the very least. By then it could be. They could be doing big arena shows. It could be a television show that rivals Raw, if not SmackDown. Would they be prepared to put a full NXT main event on in its own right? We could see Matt Riddle and Adam Cole, for example, rather than what you're suggesting against Brock Lesnar, which would be a cross-brand thing.
What do you think?
The Riddle Goldberg thing is so tough, because it's like all this talk about them wanting to bring Goldberg in as this badass old man who just shows up, kicks someone's ass, and then buggers off a minute later. Can't really do that against Matt Riddle. If you,
I think Riddle would have to destroy him.
Yeah, he would. You'd have to put him in the
10
knee
seconds.
bar for the pops, obviously.
I want a knee bar, bro.
I'd love to see someone get hot shotted into that and get over to that extent and so forth. But the problem is, like, and here's the cynic in me coming out once again, I have no faith in their star making machine whatsoever. Particularly not over. Well, maybe if he just came out of nowhere and won the Royal Rumble, that's only 4 months. If you win, they might not mess it up in 4 months.
They will.
Give them a year.
They'll mess it up in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
If he wins the Royal Rumble, he'll have to have been moved to a different roster, which means we're going to have another draft.
Yeah.
Before then. So,
Cool.
Right, we're going to have to move on and cheer
Let's
ourselves
tap
up here.
Let's tap
I've allowed you each one banter pick for the main event of WrestleMania. Andy Murray, I'm glancing at your notes throughout this, and I couldn't work out what on earth you've written.
Nobody can read that handwriting, man. Right, so I'm going to read a list of wrestlers and just jump in when you tell me you notice something common between these people, right? Bobo Lashley, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows. Bald, right?
What?
Eric Young, Rowan, all these men. What I'm going to do at WrestleMania, and this is a bit of a cheat because it's going to encompass about 9 matches, is I'm going to revive the greatest failed WCW pay-per-view concept of all time, Battle Bowl. We are going to finally, the underrepresented bald community is going to have a night that we can just revive the worst pay-per-view gimmick of all time. A bunch of lethal lottery tags and a big battle royal to close this show, in which, I don't know, Eric Young will be crowned king of the balls.
this is Battle Bald, yeah.
There we go.
I could have Super Bald.
Yeah.
Like Super Brawl, balled out.
Super ball down?
Yep.
Maybe not that.
Bald at the beach.
Bald at the beach. Yeah. Hey, you say underrepresented.
blood. Yeah.
You say underrepresented, but Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin, two of the
Big Show is a pretty big star.
Yeah, and I'm as a man of receding follicles, I'm totally in favour of this
This is
idea.
like looking in the mirror. This like
Benjamin Richardson, who have you gone for to make
I have gone. This is people have been waiting over 30 years for this rematch. We sort of got it at WrestleMania 4. I'm going Hulk Hogan versus the Andre the Giant trophy.
I have to ask, who's going over?
Well, Andre needs to get his win back, but I think it's probably going to be Hogan.
Hogan's going
To rehabilitate Hulk Hogan. He body slams
I think it's going to take more than body slamming a trophy, but I'll go with it. My final pick to headline WrestleMania 36, stay with me on this, is Titus ONeil.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. No right against him.
Why is that a banter pick?
Well, he's not been booked that well over the last few months, I'll say it this way. But, hear me out, I'm not actually having him be the main event. I'd have a Undertaker versus Daniel Bryan or Reigns versus Rollins main event. But the main event is the last match, correct? Mm-hmm. We all had that argument about when Hulk Hogan came back and challenged Yokozuna. That was the main event. It was awful.
I know where this is going.
So, why not, as all the big pyro and everyone's, yeah, there we go, thanks very much for watching WrestleMania 36. 24/7 championship match. Just whoever's the champion, it's probably going to be R-Truth on his 90th title run at that point, sprints down to the ring, gets caught by Titus. Everyone in Tampa nails him, lays him out, and as all the fireworks go off and the confused newly crowned WWE champion is celebrating on the ramp. Titus ONeil, Titus ONeil, the inaugural 24/7 champion, finally wins his belt back.
Bloody bald as well, isn't he?
There we go.
Perfect.
So as Hulk Hogan celebrates on the ramp, high five Titus, there you go. Wins the 24/7 championship.
That's
let's be honest,
a ludicrously good outcome on every level.
It's not beyond the realms of imagination, is it?
No, and nothing is.
No, exactly.
The fact is that's as realistic as AJ Styles,
exactly,
who we haven't mentioned, Kevin Owens, who we haven't mentioned, Finn Balor, who we haven't mentioned,
Shane McMahon.
Yeah.
Oh God. Right, let us know your thoughts on who you think should headline next year's WrestleMania in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. My thanks to Benjamin Richardson and Andy Murray. This has been Get the Table. Thank you for watching. You can follow us all on Twitter. You can follow us at WhatCulture WWE. You can follow Andy Murray at
Andy H. Murray. The H stands for Hanako, and that's who should headline WrestleMania.
You can follow Benjamin Richardson at
BAR3Bud.
You can follow me at Adam Wilborn. As I said, follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. This has been Get the Table. Thank you for watching. We will see you soon.